Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to What's Your Take? My name is Dayo Akintobi, and I will be taking you through the major stories that made the headlines yesterday and today. Joining me to bring you those stories today is our newscaster, Monisola Abosede. Good morning, Monisola. How are you today?
I'm very fine today. Thank you, Dayo. How are you too?
I am also very well. All right. Well, today is a very interesting day as the outgoing administration winds down its tenure. There's so much going on in Abuja, so much going on around the country. Well, first, let's take a look at this apology from the Nigerian YouTuber MD Tiamiyu, who has apologized for saying in an interview with the BBC that Nigerians use study programs as an access road to the United Kingdom. This is all based on that change in immigration policy in the UK, where they said foreign students can no longer bring their family to the UK when they come to study for master's degree programs and such like. Well, this young lad went on an interview in the BBC and said that essentially Nigerians are not particularly interested in getting additional degrees, that they're going to the UK in search of a better life and just using the loophole of the immigration law to be able to escape the rigors of life in Nigeria. There was a massive outcry and protest, of course, in the aftermath of his interview. And so he has walked back that statement now and has apologized to Nigerians and tried to take it back. Of course, how do you put the genie in the bottle after it has escaped? It might be too little, too late. All right. Governor Abiodun of Ogun State is blaming Ibukunle Amesu, his predecessor, for the Dangote refinery being relocated to Lagos as opposed to Ogun State. Initially, Olokola Free Trade Zone on the border of Ogun State and Ondo State was the initial site that was proposed for the refinery, but due to political wrangling and so many other factors, it didn't work out, and the refinery was eventually moved to Lagos, and the blame game is now on because, of course, the refinery is coming with great advantages for the communities and for the state in which it is located. So now everybody's passing the buck as to who let Ogun State lose that major asset. All right. One more thing that might interest you to know is Netflix. Many of us get our entertainment, movies, and news and all that from Netflix. And we've had a particular penchant for sharing our password with other people. Netflix has a methodology where once you subscribe, you can share your password with your loved ones. Well, Netflix is saying no more. Anybody who is not in your household cannot share your password because they're losing revenue based on one subscription being shared to so many people in other places. So from now on, if you want somebody outside your household to watch Netflix, you have to pay for an extra subscription. So please note that. All right. The other thing in the news is the crash of the Naira. The Naira has fallen a bit further, and now the dollar is trading, I think, in the 760 area, and the pound is in the mid 900s. And I saw something yesterday on Twitter that said, well, President Buhari came into office promising he would make the Naira equal to the dollar, and now he's going out at the point where the Naira is almost 1 to 1,000 pounds, 1,000 Naira to 1 pound. So not a very good report card on that. Okay, having this chat dispatched with the lighter items on our agenda, it's time to delve into the substance of today's program. And for that, I will hand over to Monisola to give us the headlines of the major stories we'll be looking at today. Over to you, Monisola.
Thank you, Dayo. Hello and welcome to the news updates on What's Your Take? First, the headlines. President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed appreciation to his ministers for their loyalty to the country at valedictory fake, orders them to stay in office till May 29th. President Buhari has sought the Senate's approval for a 539 billion judgment debt payoff. CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele has said the government will ask Dangote to sell forex to Nigerian banks at a good rate. President Buhari says Nigerians are enjoying the positive impact of closed land borders. A tomato shortage looms in Nigeria as farmers lose 5.6 billion naira in 1 month. Now the details. President Muhammadu Buhari chaired the valedictory session of the Federal Executive Council FEC on Wednesday. During the session, he expressed appreciation to the ministers for their service to the country and for their loyalty to his administration. The president also ordered the ministers to stay in office until May 29th and refused to dissolve the cabinet. At a similar event rounding up his tenure, the president charged the country's security agencies not to relate in protecting citizens and the nation at large. Next, President Muhammadu Buhari has asked the Senate to approve the payment of judgment debts awarded by different courts against the federal government. The president said the judgment debts were awarded in different currencies, which is summed up to $556 million, £98 million, and 226 billion naira. In a letter to the Senate, the president stated that the debts were awarded in litigations against federal ministries, departments, and agencies of the federal government through the issuance of promissory notes. The president noted that the Federal Executive Council approved settlement of judgment debts in sitting on 29th of March. With the Dangote refinery set to deliver its first products in July, the governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, said yesterday that the refinery will be persuaded to sell foreign exchange earnings to banks at a good rate. Speaking at the end of the 291st Monetary Policy meeting in Abuja, Emefiele said his team would engage the promoter of the refinery, Alhaji Alingo Dangote, to ensure that Nigerians benefited from the venture, adding that the CBN, the federal government, and indeed the country helped him set up the refinery. The CBN bros expressed optimism that the refinery would ease the foreign exchange scarcity in the country, noting that with local refinery, about 20% cost of the total cost of importing petroleum products could be saved, thereby reducing prices in the long run. He, however, said that it was time to exit the false subsidy regime. Moving on, President Muhammadu Buhari, during the inauguration of the new custom headquarters in Abuja on Tuesday, said he deliberately shut the country's land borders to encourage food production in Nigeria, which Nigerians later appreciated. Justifying his reasons, the president said, "With our land potential, we thank God Nigeria is favored. We have people, we have land, and we have weather. How many nations are as lucky as Nigeria in the world? Very few nations are as lucky as we are. We thank God for that." Continuing, he said, "So closing that border, 1,600 kilometers from Lake Chad to Benin, and Nigerians insist that they have to impress their neighbors and other people, and they eat foreign rice. I said, no rice. You eat whatever you grow or you die." I tried to make my point. Later, Nigerians appreciated it because it provided more jobs. And lastly, according to a report by the Independent newspaper, scarcity of tomatoes is likely to happen as soon as possible, as farmers in the 5 major tomato-producing states in the country have lost over 5.6 billion in 1 month as a result of the Tuta absoluta species of a moth which ravaged their farms. The farmers are in Kaduna, Kano, Gombe, Jigawa, and Plateau states. A market survey around Mile 12 International Market in Lagos revealed that a big basket of fresh tomatoes is now sold for 43,000 and 49,000, as against 9,000 and 10,000 in January. And those are the headline news stories we'll be looking at today. Over to you, Dayo.
Thank you, Munisola. Wow, you eat what you grow or you die. Ha! That's serious. All right, we shall take a short break now and return to take a probing look at those stories in a short while. Don't go away.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, the truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa forest.
On Digi 360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians are saying in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
Digi 360, dissecting the issues.
Welcome back. Our host today, Dayo Akintobi, and I will be giving us his take on the big stories that I just listed on the program. Welcome back. Good morning.
Hello, Munisola. Welcome to all our viewers. Again, it's good to be here in this capacity. Most of the time I wear a different hat, being the one asking our guests what their take is on various issues. So it's good to have an opportunity to give my own take from time to time, and I look forward to an engaging discussion with you, Munisola.
All right, so let's get right into the business of the day. President Muhammadu Buhari commended his ministers for a job well done at a valedictory session on Wednesday, and then he gave them a pat on the back for their loyalty. Now, do you believe the ministers deserve a pat on the back, but the state of the administration is leaving the country?
Well, I don't particularly know that this crop of ministers, that there's any one of them that stands out as having performed exceedingly well. I know the Minister of Works and Housing seems to have acquitted himself admirably, based on the fact that we can say this administration did infrastructure quite well. So perhaps thumbs up to the Ministry of Works. I don't really know of any other administration, any other ministry. Education, we were plagued by ASU strikes throughout a large part of the 8 years. Aviation and transportation, Nigeria Air is yet to fly, even though they're saying we'll see the plane tomorrow. Tomorrow, the 26th, 3 days to the end of the tenure, they're saying the plane will come in tomorrow. Even if it does come in tomorrow, the airline won't fly tomorrow. So it's still just very symbolic. So I look at all the various ministries. Finance, I can't say they've done that exceedingly well. Humanitarian affairs and disaster management. So I look at it and I ask myself, well, look, if we're saying how well the ministers have performed will be based on the report card we give President Buhari himself. Even though he doesn't do this work himself, he delegates to his ministers. So if you are giving President Buhari a pass mark, then of course his ministers are the ones who did the work, they get a pass mark. Yes. If you are giving President Buhari a failed mark, then of course his ministers have failed too. In the terms of the issue of loyalty, I guess that's a given, that people that you bring to work for you and who have pledged their allegiance to the Constitution and to your administration, you would expect them to be loyal. Yeah, so I'm not too much worried about the loyalty aspect. It's the performance. For example, look at Ministry of Information and Culture. I believe one of the failings of the Buhari administration was effectively communicating its achievements. I actually think they achieved quite a bit, but I think communicating that to the public was very poor. So we'll give the Ministry of Information a fair mark. So that performance issue is the question as to how well did the cabinet perform in its duties. I'm not so sure that too many Nigerians will give them a pass mark.
So would you give them a pass mark?
Me personally, individually, well, I think no government is all good and no government is all bad. So they do achieve some things and they fail in some other things. So at the end of the day, what you want to try and do is to evaluate, did they have more ups than they had downs? Did they have more successes than they had failures? And I think the jury is still out I think this government did very well in terms of legislative reform. They got a lot of bills passed, constitutional amendments passed. I think they did well in the area of infrastructure. I know they were hampered by COVID, by the recession, by restiveness in the Niger Delta. They had a lot of challenges. But by and large, I think overall they didn't do too badly in certain areas. And I think then in other areas, they didn't do well. So it just depends on how it breaks. It depends on what side, where the shoe is pinching you as an individual, is how you look at it to see was the tenure of the administration helpful to you or harmful to you. In my case, I would say I'm not any worse off than I was in 2015, but I'm also not any better off than I was in 2015. So I've maintained status quo. I don't know about many other Nigerians. Some will say they're better off, many will say they're worse off. It just depends on where you are.
Interesting take, Dayo. You know the president has ordered the ministers to carry on with their assignment until May 29, and he has refused to dissolve the cabinet. This is very unusual. Most state governments have dissolved their cabinet already and asked political appointees to hand over to the permanent secretary or the highest ranking civil servants in each ministry. Now, is President Buhari merely playing to the gallery, with this directive, or is there anything substantive that the ministers can still get done in the remaining few days?
Well, the government became a lame duck government several months ago. And by lame duck, it means basically they are just coasting to the finish line. They are not really doing much. But probably why he wants them to stay for a few more days is to complete their handover notes, to round up on any outstanding business that's not done. But they should have been doing that in the last several weeks. It doesn't have to come down to the last 2 or 3 days. So I think it's more a symbolic gesture to show that the administration is on its feet, is working to the last minute. In terms of real work, I don't think anything else is really going to get done between yesterday and Monday. For one thing, on the weekends, government shuts down anyway. So that's Saturday true. And Sunday, there's not going to be any work. So effectively, he said that on Wednesday, so Thursday and Friday are the only 2 days left for them to continue working, because Monday morning they're all going to Eagle Square for the inauguration. So on Thursday and Friday, what can they really achieve that they've not achieved in the last 8 years or in the last 2 weeks or 3 months that they could have been preparing their handover notes? So perhaps it's just to send a message that there's no vacuum in government. Governance continues until the very last day, that we will not rest on our oars, that whatever problems are still pending, we will continue to try to address them until the very last minute. But in truth, very little, if anything, will be achieved in those 2 days.
I feel like the president has passed a strong message, like you said. Moving on to our next story, President Muhammadu Buhari again sent the Senate to approve the payment of judgment debts awarded by different courts against the federal government. The amounts are roughly to $556 million, 98 million pounds, and 226 billion naira. Shouldn't these have been left to the incoming administration?
Well, interesting. With just a few days to go in its tenure, you ask yourself, is there any justification for requesting these humongous sums of money? And in light of the fact that just a couple of weeks ago, the president asked for approval to borrow $800 million for palliatives to cushion the removal of subsidy, which is going to be done by the incoming administration. You ask yourself that, was this really necessary in the 9 minutes? Is it for the purpose intended, or is it just people looking for pension and soft landing to ease their transition back into civilian life out of government? Well, okay, he's justified the fact that this money is owed, that these are coming from judgments given by courts against ministries, departments, and agencies, and that basically there are monies that must be paid, that the federal government has issued promissory notes to the people that are owed this money, and those promissory notes basically encumber the government to pay these monies. So he's saying those judgments came during his tenure, so he should settle the debt, being an honorable man. But you look at it and you say, well, even if the Senate issues the approval, the monies can't be given out in 2-3 days and paid and settled and all that. So why wasn't it just left to the outgoing administration? Especially when already the mood of the country is that this administration has overborrowed, it has over-leveraged itself, it has put the country in debt that will be paid by generations upon generations upon generations. It might not have been a politic thing to do to add additional debt when you could have easily just passed that to your predecessor. I mean, sorry, your successor. You could easily have passed it to your successor and let him handle it, because like I said, in 2 to 3 days, you can't complete the transaction anyway. So I would say it's not a very good move, even if it is justifiable. But not everything that's justifiable is politic or moral. You have to find a way to balance interests. So your interest is to pay the debt, but at the same time, public perception is important when the public is basically not happy with the fact that the administration owes so much money and they are wanting to borrow more in the last few days. So I'm not really au fait with this happening.
Thank you so much. Moving on to the next topic. Dayo, do you think the federal government can prevail on Dangote to sell forex to Nigerian banks at a good rate once they start exporting refined products? You know, as a private businessman, one who borrowed huge sums of money, you know, to build a refinery, won't he be more concerned about covering his costs and making a profit?
Well, what the CBN is saying is that the federal government, the CBN, and the Nigerian people in general played a role in helping him build this refinery. Lagos State provided the land, CBN provided funding, Nigerian people provided support and goodwill for the project and encouragement. So he's saying that there should be a quid pro quo, that there should be some consideration given to Nigerians for their enabling this project to happen. And he says the way Dangote can do that is because, remember, after he refines all the fuel, right, he's going to supply Nigeria and then export the rest. That one that he exports, he will earn dollars for it. So what they're saying is that can make dollars more readily available in the country and ease the scarcity of dollar that we've been facing that has been making it very expensive to buy the dollar. So they're saying that dollar that he earns overseas, he should make available at reasonable exchange rates so that Nigerians too can get a benefit. Likewise, we are also believing that the price of fuel at the pump will be reasonable based on the fact that there is no more transportation costs, there's no storage costs by refining it locally and all that. So my take on it is that Dangote is a private businessman. He borrowed money and is in it for profit, as you correctly alluded to. He's not a charity. He's not a philanthropist, at least not in this sense. So I think he will do what is beneficial to him. If in the process Nigerians benefit, fine. But I think he will look at his costs and say, well, I have to pay interest on the monies I borrowed. I took a risk in doing this business, and risk has its reward. So I don't think he's going to necessarily go out of his way to say that because Nigerians helped me to go complete this project, all the risk is on his shoulders. And on account of that risk, he's got to be rewarded adequately. So this is the issue. I don't think that we have any right or any sense of entitlement to believe that we will have a benefit from him earning dollars or from him reaping the reward of his risk. I don't think so. Well
said, well said. If you could remember, sometime in 2019, the president closed the land borders and then stopped importation of rice and other food products. You know, now the president has come out to say that he did this to boost local production and consumption. Do you think that adopting this technique to build local production and consumption was a wise move by the president?
But where's the local production now? I mean, yes, okay, so he stopped importation of rice. He said Nigerians are trying to impress their neighbors by eating imported rice, and that he closed borders to boost local production. Where's the local production? There's still foreign rice everywhere. The little bit of local rice we're producing is just as expensive as imported rice. So how did it benefit us? How did we gain from all the months of closing the borders? I mean, food is just as expensive as before, whether locally produced or imported. So I don't see the real actual benefit of that move over the years on the pockets of Nigerian consumers. I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see it.
Really? Thank you so much for your take. That was an interesting one. Moving on to the next story. One thing we cannot afford to have, and no, we do not pray to have, is food scarcity. You know, you would agree with me that the prices of food under the current administration have gone up than they used to be. So we might be in for more. So in a report by the independent newspapers, scarcity of tomatoes is inevitable in the coming days as a result of a lingering problem of pests destroying farm produce. Now, it is said that another contributing factor to prolonging this problem is the government's negligence. You know, Association of Tomatoes Farmers have said that they found a solution to this pressed issue, but they need the government to provide subsidy for them because they could not afford this the solution. They could not afford to get a solution to solving the problem. Now, the government is not responding and is contributing to prolonging this issue. What are your thoughts on this matter?
Yes, it's really terrible. As it is already, food is expensive in the market, and now we are looking at tomatoes exploding in price because of this pest that is ravaging tomato farms. Remember, there's already insecurity that's stopping farmers from going to farm. There was flooding last year that wrecked crops and stopped farmers from going to farm. Now we have a pest that is attacking tomatoes and creating a scarcity of the crop. And farmers are saying there's a solution. There's pesticide, there's crop spraying, crop dusting. There are things we can do, but we can't afford to do them on our own. We need government help, and government is being lackadaisical about helping them. So it is us, the average citizen of Nigeria, who will suffer because, as you can see, they say the price of tomato is going to triple in the coming months. So my advice to Nigerians, if you can't, go out and buy tomatoes and freeze them in your freezer, because the price is going to go up because there's a scarcity.
Interesting. And that is where we must rest it today as we've run out of time. Thank you for giving us your take on the issues of today, Dayo. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be here to host today's show. Thank you so much. And thank you, Nigeria, for being a part of today's show also. Join us again next time as we bring to you trenchant analysis of the breaking news that made the headlines today and every day. My name is Munisola Abosede. Many thanks for watching. Have a great day.